Welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. I'm Jeff Power, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, joined once again by Logan Glaser of RealTime Fantasy Sports. Logan, thanks for coming on with me once again today.
Yep, as always. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
Should be a great show today, Logan. Every week we preview all the games and give you a different category. This week, we're going to do sleepers, Logan. So we're going to give you one sleeper from every NFL game of Week 8. A lot of teams to choose from this week. No teams on a bye this week, Logan.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of close matchups this week. I think last week we saw it was the upset week, is kind of what we were talking about in our last show with that. Lots of teams were upsetted. We had Bills get upset, 49ers get upset, lots of upsets around. And this week, when you look at the slate, there's going to be a lot of even games. I mean, most of the spreads are pretty close if you look across the board.
Yeah, last week there were a lot of home dogs, so a lot of road teams were favored last week, like big, and it ended up not playing out that way. A lot of the home teams that were not favored covered, so that was kind of interesting. And also with the way things are going with scores, a lot of low scores are predicted. The over under, if you look at the lines, they're a lot lower than they have been to start the year at least. So scores are kind of down overall if you look at it.
Yep, agreed, except for Miami's offense. Besides them.
That's it. And then the Colts Browns game last week. We all saw that coming.
Yep,
Everybody thought there would
that'll be
no
way
points
over.
in
That'll
that
help
game.
inflate some numbers.
Yeah, exactly. That screwed everything up. No one saw that one coming, but that was crazy. So, Logan, before we get into all these games, let's quickly talk about all of our great DFS games we have to offer here at Real Time Fantasy Sports. If you go to rtsports.com, click on that Money League link, but we have all sorts of different DFS options for people to choose from.
Yeah, all different price points. It ranges from $1, and then you can go up to head-to-head for up to $500 for an entry. We got GPPs, 50-50s. You can do drafts versus other players in a daily format. You can go up to 10 different teams in a draft format with that, or you can just go against one other team in a straight head-to-head draft. We also have a face-off competition, which is our 3-week-long NFL competition where you draft a different team each week. If you win, you advance the next round. It's a one and done format. So lots of different options to choose from during the middle of the season. We also got Pick'em, where you can choose more or less on players' projections, and then you can get paid up to 40 times your entry fee if you go 6 for 6 on that.
And as you see up on the screen there, first-time depositors, if you have not been to our site and played, 100% instant deposit match up to $200 if you use the code ALARM23. So take advantage of that. If you have never used our site before and played any of our games, you'll want to take advantage of that 100% instant deposit match. Again, go to rtsports.com, use the code ALARM23. Get in all these great daily games. You can do football, basketball. That's going on as well. That just started last night. We were just talking about that before we came on. So a lot of different options to choose from. So please take advantage of that. And as we always say every week when we're on here, Logan, we love to answer questions. So if you have any questions at all during this broadcast, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. Logan and I will try to help you out as best as possible. If you have lineup questions, trade questions, you name it, we're here to try to help you win your games for the week. So, Logan, let's jump into this now. Let's talk about sleepers for Week 8. We'll jump into the Thursday night game. Bucks 3-3 at the Bills 4-3. Bills coming off uninspiring loss, in my opinion. I thought they were going to absolutely blow out the Patriots, but that didn't happen. They lost. So, who's your sleeper in this game?
Yeah, my sleeper is going to be Rashid White. He's not a huge deep sleeper, but he's only started in about 50% of RT Sports leagues. But he's getting such high volume that it's impossible for me not to start him in my lineup. He's getting 14 carries per game so far in the season. He's also getting 3.7 receptions per game. So he's looking at 17 to 18 touches per game. He only has one touchdown on the year, which is a bit concerning with that. But I think this could have potential to be a high-scoring affair tonight with Tampa and Buffalo. So I like him to possibly find the end zone tonight.
So I think the Bucks are going to get blown out tonight. I think the Bills are going to have a chip on their shoulder. They're at home, Thursday night game, short week. So I like a lot of points for the Bills. So I think the Bucks are going to be playing behind. And I'm kind of intrigued by Cade Otton, the tight end with the Bucks. He had 5 catches last week. He has 2 games this season with double-digit fantasy points, so he's shown some good things at times. Like I said, I think the Bucks playing from behind could be some favorable matchups and coverage for Otton. So I like him as a deep sleeper at tight end this week. All right, next game, Logan. Texans 3-3 at the Panthers 0-6. Will the Panthers get a win this week? That's the big question.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game, honestly, with Carolina being home. I think this sets up to be a very close game. I think it could be a potential high scoring game as well with that. A sneaky flex play I'm going to be going with is Chuba Hubbard. I know Miles Sanders is back, but as they mentioned that it's going to be kind of a committee approach between Hubbard and Sanders. So Sanders is making 7 million more per year than Hubbard, but Hubbard's been absolutely more efficient back so far. Last week he had 4.6 yards per carry. He had 19 carries, 88 yards and a touchdown, and he was a really good plug and play in lots of people's lineups. Sanders coming back does hurt his value, but I think he can still go for around 10 to 15 fantasy points in a flex play if you need someone.
So Panthers at home, I'm saying they get their first win. Coming off a bye, that's my upset pick of the week. The Texans are actually favored in this game. So I think the Panthers are going to win. And you stole my guy. Hubbard was my pick for the sleeper as well. So we have a lot of games to get to, so we'll move quick here. Texans also allow the 9th most fantasy points of running backs. I don't have much more to add about Hubbard. I think he's a great play as well. So we'll move on, Logan. Good call there. Rams 3-4 at the Cowboys 4-2. So Cowboys at home here. Rams, they're 3-4, under 500 now. Who do you like as a sleeper in this
Yeah,
matchup?
I like the Cowboys in this. I'm going to be going with Dak Prescott as a sleeper. I actually just picked him up a few minutes ago in one of my leagues as a free agent. But last week he had 27.6 fantasy points. He finally started getting going. He had season-long highs in pass yardage and rush yardage, 276 pass yards, or 272 and a touchdown, 40 rush yards and a touchdown. So he finally got it going both with his legs and arms. With that, they're coming off a bye. And they got a great matchup against a Rams defense that ranks 21st against opposing QBs. So I really like him in this matchup with that.
Yeah, who would have thought Dak Prescott would be a sleeper? But he is, because he is
Yeah.
not getting every week play anymore. I like Jake Ferguson, another tight end. So I'm going tight end whisperer here this week. So I like Ferguson a lot this week. He's coming off just a one-catch performance, so you're probably really down on him. But he had 2 games with double-digit fantasy points before that dud. I think they get him more involved from the get-go this week. The Rams have also been a team that struggled to stop the tight end, allow the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends. So I think Ferguson could be a good play in this matchup. As you mentioned as well, Rams not very good against the pass. They got some injuries in the secondary. So I like the Cowboys to win. I like them to win big here, and I like a lot of their players offensively for fantasy purposes. Okay, Logan, next game, Vikings 3-4, starting to play some good football, even without Justin Jefferson. Won 2 straight games. Big win last week against the 49ers. They're at the Packers 2-4, kind of going the other direction, in my opinion. They're not playing quite as well as they were earlier in the season. Jordan Love has not looked great in recent weeks, unfortunately. Who's your sleeper here in this
No,
matchup?
he sure has not looked great. I think this is going to be a very close game. I think the line's 1 for Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken with that. I think this is going to be a toss-up. Comes down to last possession. I'm going to be going with Romeo Doubs in this. I think he's going to be a borderline start in most leagues. Again, with no buys, you're kind of iffy on him. A lot really depends on Christian Watson as well. He suffered a knee injury at the end of last week. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on. He's probable, so it sounds like he's going to play, but he was kind of limited in practice. But Minnesota's defense ranks 26th against the pass, against opposing wide receivers. So that sets up really well for Romeo Doubs. He has 4 touchdowns in 6 games so far this year. If Watson doesn't play, he has an extremely high ceiling. He had 13, 12 targets in those games that Watson missed. Even though if Watson does play, I still like him as a flex option.
Yeah, I agree. I like Dobbs either way. He's actually been better than Watson this year, surprisingly. So maybe Watson will get going at some point, but he just can't stay healthy at this point. So I think it'll be a close game as well, Logan. I agree with you there. I think the Vikings win, though. They're getting it rolling a little bit. Their defense has played better, so I like them to win this game on the road. I like Cam Akers this week a little bit. So he had double-digit carries for the first time as a Viking last week, 10 carries, 31 yards. I know not great numbers, but he caught 2 passes for 30 yards as well. So at 61 total yards, not bad. Caught a couple passes. And the big thing for me, he was getting the carries late in the game when they were trying to ice it, the Vikings. So I think they're starting to have a lot more faith in him. Alexander Madison has not looked great, in my opinion, as well. So I think Akers is going to start to get more play. Packers also a team that allows the 3rd most fantasy points of running backs, 30th overall against the run. So I think Akers could get a little more play in this matchup, could be a sneaky flex play as well. All right, next game, Logan. Saints 3-4 at the Colts 3-4. 2 3-4 teams going at it here. Saints defense is pretty good. Colts defense has not been too good. So could this be
Yeah,
another
I mean,
high
this is
scoring
another
game?
one of those even games, like I talked about.
Yeah.
Every single one of these games can go either way, that we've kind of mentioned so far. Player I'm going to be looking at, though, is Josh Downs. He's had 3 straight weeks of 13-plus fantasy points. Last week, he had 23.5 fantasy points, 125 yards, 5 receptions, a touchdown. And he's been out targeting Michael Pittman the last couple of weeks. And Pittman kind of made note about that, and he kind of expressed that he wants to be targeted more. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, because Downs has been electric in that offense so far, especially with Minshew at QB. It's kind of all over the place with that. It's a lot different dynamic for that offense than if Richardson was in, who would primarily be a runner as a quarterback. So I really like Minshew in there for Downs. So I'm going to be going with him as my sleeper.
Yeah, I think Minshew is a added bonus for that passing game because he's going to air it out and take some chances. So Downs has really been good. He's been a player that I never thought that I would be having in my lineup on a consistent basis, but he has been a starter for me in several leagues, and I'm sticking with him. He's been producing good. So I'm on the opposite end of things. I'm looking at a Saints player, and I like Michael Thomas. I know before you would think he's a stud and you're just playing him every week, but he is kind of gone the way of injuries the last few years, so people don't trust him quite as much. But I like him now. He's been playing good. He has double-digit fantasy points all but 2 games this season, so he's been consistent. Numbers haven't been off the charts, but consistent, which I like. I like his fantasy floor, especially this week against the Colts. They're allowing 27.3 points per game, so I think the Saints could score some in this matchup. I do think the Colts are going to win at home, squeak it out here. Like you said, another close game on the schedule here, but I like the Colts to win in a close one. I think there'll be some points in this one as well, though. All right, next game, Logan. Patriots 2-5 at the Dolphins 5-2. So the Patriots got some magic last week. Mac Jones actually looked pretty good in that matchup against the Bills, made some plays late in the game. Are they going to do it again? Are they going to go on the road and shock the world and beat the Dolphins?
I'm saying no,
Yeah,
but
I agree.
for my player, it comes down to injury status. So it kind of sounds like Tyreek Hill might miss the game based on reports. So it's kind of still up in the air with him. So definitely got to keep an eye on with that and have a backup plan if he does not go. It kind of would surprise me if he doesn't go, though, just because he's talked so much about getting 2,000 yards for a season, and missing a game would be very crucial for that. He's on pace to go over the 2,000 yards. So as long as he keeps up that pace, then he will be fine. But I'm going to go with Braxton Berrios as my deep sleeper for this. And this is just contingent on if Tyreek Hill does miss. I think there's going to be so many targets to step into that role with. And in week 4, Braxton Berrios had 17.4 fantasy points, and that was with Waddle and Hill in the lineup. He's their clear wide receiver number 3 with that, and I think he'll step up into that wide receiver 2 role behind Waddle if Hill does miss.
Yeah, sometimes it's game script as well. So the Dolphins could get up big, start throwing the ball late, rest people like Hill, who's banged up a little bit, and if he plays, maybe they don't want to take chances with him late in the game if they get up big. So the Berrios call is a good one, a good maybe a good dart throw in DFS because he's probably super cheap on there. And if you want to save some money and spend in other areas, it might not be a bad play to go that route. So I like the Dolphins to win big in this game. I kind of like the Bills. I think they're going to come out fired up and going to put it on the Patriots in this one. So I like the Dolphins to win big. But because of that, I think the Patriots are going to be playing from behind, having to throw the ball more. So I like Kendrick Bourne, who's been one of the few bright spots in that Patriots passing game, in my opinion. He has 16 receptions his last 2 games, scored his 3rd touchdown of the season last week. As I mentioned, I think they're going to be playing from behind, having to throw the ball a lot. Miami also has struggled against the pass for the most part. They allow the 5th most fantasy points to receivers. I'm not sure when Jalen Ramsey comes back, that will be a big boost for their secondary. But right now, it's letting up some points and yards. So I think Bourne could take advantage of that again in week 8. All right, Logan, the next game is 2 New York teams. So
we do have a question if you want to go to that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't see that. So start Burrow or Cousins this week. That's a close call. I actually have that same debate in a league. What's your thoughts before
So
I?
I'm personally going to go with Burrow in this. I think it's going to be just a higher scoring game between Cincinnati and the 49ers. Total set for 44 for that. I don't like Cousins against Green Bay's defense. I think Green Bay has a better defense with that, especially at Green Bay and without Jefferson. So I'm going to go with Burrow between those two.
I agree. So I have Burrow 8 in my rankings and Cousins 9. So they're right next to each other. I think it's kind of a coin flip. I still think Cousins will do fine this week on the road, but that San Francisco secondary is kind of beat up right now, and they've allowed some yards recently. I think it's 25 plus fantasy points to QBs 2 of their last 4 games. So Burrow has been doing pretty well there lately, as well as he's getting healthier. So I think Burrow's the play here in this matchup. I like him there. All right, Logan, next game. It's 2 New York teams. So I guess the Giants are the home team, even though they're playing in the same stadium that they both play in. So it's Jets 3-3 at the Giants 2-5. Giants coming off a pretty good showing their last time out. Jets a big win as well. They had a bye last week. So who do you like here?
Yeah, this is kind of a deeper sleeper play, but I'm going to go Tyler Conklin. We've kind of mentioned him several times on our waiver wire videos, but he's the number 3 option in that Jets offense behind Garrett Wilson and then Brees Hall for targets. And he's had at least 4 targets in every single game except week 1 so far. So they're constantly looking at him. And for a tight end to get 4+ targets, who's going to be cheap and I'm going to be on your waiver wire, I'm perfectly fine picking him up, and I feel comfortable starting him in my lineup. So.
I like that. I like that call. And I'm actually going to give you something a little different here. I'm going to say a defense. I like the Giants defense this week. So they're 6th in defensive scoring their last 3 games, 6 sacks their last game, double-digit fantasy points 2 of 3 games as well. So if you're looking for a defense this week, trying to stream someone, Giants are available in nearly every league on our site. They're owned on just 7.5%. So I like them as a streaming defense this week. So I'll give you a little different option there in that matchup. And I think the Giants might win this game as well. It'll be a close one, though. You're right, though. There's a lot of close games this week. So I think that they could be a good play this week defensively, and I like them to win it at home in a low-scoring game there. All right, Logan, a couple more questions here. We have Stash, Eli Mitchell, Mingo, Pierre Strong, PPR. I have Hunt and Ford. My running backs are stronger than my wide receivers. So who would you stash out of that?
I think I'm gonna go with Pierre Strong just based off of that. You have Hunt and Ford as well. It sounds like Jerome Ford's going to be out this week, so Pierre Strong's going to go into that role with Kareem Hunt. So I think I'm just playing it safe and having a stash with your backup.
I'm probably the same way. Mingo kind of intrigues me, especially going forward. I think they're going to want to get him involved more, but Thielen and Shark have been pretty good this year, so I don't know how much Mingo plays going forward. So I think Strong probably makes the most sense since you have Hunt and Ford. Mitchell's intriguing as well, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and even when he was active and you thought he might play more, he still didn't play. So kind of a strange situation there in San Francisco. Jordan Mason as well getting a lot of work. So I think Strong probably makes the most sense of the stash there. All right, next game, Logan. Jags 5-2 at the Steelers 4-2. So the Steelers, I don't know, they're a team that kind of baffles me. I think they're the worst 4-2 team in the league.
Yeah,
I don't think
you would think they would be 2-4 at best
yeah,
with how their offense is played, but their defense has really stepped up, and
that's true.
they've definitely kept them in those games.
So who do you like as your sleeper in that matchup?
Yeah, I don't think I would ever say this as my sleeper at the start of the season because he was going in rounds 2 and 3, but I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley. He only had 5 yards last week. Pittsburgh defense ranks 31st against opposing wide receivers. So while they might have a run-stopping defense, they have really struggled against the pass with that. So I think in order for Jacksonville to have a shot at even winning the AFC, Ridley has to get going in that offense. They cannot rely on Kirk. They can get by with winning games here and there during the regular season with Kirk being their number 1. But in order to go up against Kansas City, Buffalo, Miami, they're going to really need Calvin Ridley to step up, and I think they're getting going this week.
Yeah, it's a little bit intriguing to watch Ridley be all over the map this year. He's been kind of a frustrating fantasy player, but yeah, he could get going this week. You never know what's going to happen with him. So I like the Steelers to win at home here. Again, I don't know how they're doing it, but they're at home in this matchup. Defense has been playing good. I say they win, and I kind of like Kenny Pickett. I thought he looked good coming out of the bye last week. He has Deontay Johnson back as well. He had 230 yards without a turnover against a pretty good Rams pass defense last week. He had 17.5 fantasy points. I think he can improve on this week against the Jags. They allow the sixth most fantasy points of QBs this year, 31st overall against the pass. So I like the passing game in this matchup for the Steelers, and I think Pickett could be a decent play. We have a question about Kyler Murray. It's kind of ironic because we did a waiver video earlier this week, and you mentioned Kyler Murray. So give me your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine picking up Murray, especially if he's still a free agent in your league, even if you have him just on your bench. I think he's a great QB2 to have on your team right now. As I mentioned in our waiver wire video, in the last 3 years, he's finished as a top 10 QB in each of those years. He finished as QB3, QB10, and QB9 because he gets it done with his legs as well as his arm. He mentioned DeAndre Hopkins is no longer there with that offense. So they're a little bit weaker at wide receiver this year than in past years with Kyler Murray, but I'm perfectly fine picking him up and having him as a QB2.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you look at Dobbs. He has 25 plus fantasy points 2 games this year, and that offense has looked good at times. If Dobbs can do it, why not Murray? I mean, Murray's a much better option than him, can run the ball. So I think Murray's a possibility to do pretty well down the stretch. Might be eased into things still. They might not completely take the reins off him, calling designed runs and whatnot early on when he is back in the lineup. But I think he's back sooner than later. It could even be this week from what it looks like. He's been practicing in full. So I think he's a great pickup if he's available in your league and you need the QB help. I know someone just mentioned they need Murray to save their team because they have Fields. I mean, it could happen. I'm pulling for you. I think it's a possibility because I think Murray could definitely be a fantasy difference maker down the stretch in that offense. It has not looked too bad this year. All right, Logan, let's move on. We still have a lot of games to get through. Got some questions there coming in. We love to answer those questions though. So all good. Let's move on to the next game. Falcons at the Titans. Falcons 4-3, Titans 2-4. Arthur Smith drives everybody crazy, and he drives me crazy. But who's your
He sure does. He's probably the worst coach for if you have a fantasy player on their team because you never know what's going to happen, especially after last week. Everyone was already mad at Arthur Smith and then how he handled that Robinson situation. But
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Tajay Spears as my deep sleeper play in this game. He has at least he's averaging 3 receptions per game over the last 4 games. We got Ryan Tannehill, who's going to be out, so they're going to be relying on Levis and Willis, who are going to split apparently playing at quarterback. I guess ride the hot hand with that. So I think they're really going to turn into the running game against Atlanta, which I do think this is going to be a very low scoring game because both teams do have good defenses and not the best offenses, but Tajay Spears has great yards per carry, and I think he gets a lot more attempts this week. So I'm going to go him as my sleeper play.
And they're talking about trading Derrick Henry, so maybe they don't want to get him hurt, so they won't ride him into the ground as well. So I think it makes sense. Tajay Spears was my pick as well. I don't have much more to add. I say the Titans, I don't know if they can win at home with that QB situation, though. So I'll say the Falcons win on the road. All right, next game. Eagles 6-1 at the Commanders 3-4. Eagles looks like they're starting to come together and get it going a little bit here. Defense, offensively, I think they could win big in this matchup here, despite the Commanders playing decent at times as well. But I think the Eagles are really rolling here. Who's your sleeper pick in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert. It's more of a higher sleeper pick, but Goddard, Brown, and Smith have combined for 25, 30 targets in their last week game. So Hurts is really just looking at those 3 when you look at the offense. Occasionally, they also had Swift in there that had a couple of targets with that. But Goddard had 5 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. So he's been a very focal point in that offense and a good, reliable source for Hurts. So I'm perfectly fine starting Goddard
Yeah, he's
instead.
starting to be a little more consistent. Devontae Smith's been the guy that's driving everybody crazy, but I like Goddard for sure. I like Curtis Samuel with Washington this week as well. Last week broke a streak of at least 14 fantasy points, 3 straight games for him, so he had a down game last week. But the good news was he was still targeted 8 times in that game, which tied a season high. I think they're going to be playing from behind, have to throw the ball a lot. He had 7 catches for 51 yards against the Eagles in week 4 as well. So Samuel, I think, is a decent play this week. If you're looking for a wide receiver number 3 or a flex option, he's going to get his catches in this offense. He's been really consistent this year. All right, next game, Browns 4-2 at the Seahawks 4-2. This should be another game as well. Another good game as well. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm going to go with JSN as my sleeper pick in this. I also had him last week. He led the team in targets with 7. It does sound like Metcalf is going to play, but now Tyler Lockett is questionable. Targets have not been the issue, as I mentioned with JSN. It's been the yardage. So he's been getting lots of looks. He just really checked down is what he's getting. He had 4 receptions, 63 yards, and a touchdown last week, first of the year. So I like him to find the end zone again in this game.
So I actually like Pierre Strong here. I think the Seahawks are going to win at home. I will say that at the top here, though. The Browns playing really well. Defense is good, although they didn't play well last week defensively. But still, I worry about that QB situation with PJ Walker likely starting again. But I think the Seahawks win this game at home. And I kind of like Pierre Strong here. We mentioned him earlier when someone was asking about him, but he actually played more snaps than Hunt last week, 31% compared to 25% than Hunt. I still think Hunt probably gets more work, but Strong, I think he could be a sneaky flex play because he's going to catch the ball. It's a run-heavy offense as well, so I kind of like Strong in this matchup. So that's my sleeper play in this one. All right, Ravens 5-2 at the Cardinals 1-6. I think the Ravens are going to roll here. Lamar Jackson's been absolutely fantastic lately. Who do you like here as a sleeper?
Yeah, sleeper play, I'm gonna go with Imari DiMercado. So a lot of fantasy owners got burned by him 2 weeks ago. He was the top waiver pickup ever and thought he was gonna have a huge game. And he played, but he didn't have any targets or carries with that. But last week he had 13 carries for 58 yards. Yards per carry, he's been dominant. And last week we finally saw him get over 10 carries. So I like him as my sleeper pick.
I agree. That was my pick too. So Logan, that's 3 of them that we've agreed on. He dominated snaps last week. There's one thing I want to point out. 80% of the snaps he played. So he was on the field a ton, and that bodes well for his production. All right, let's move on to the next game then. With that one out of the way, agreeing with DeMarcado. Chiefs 6-1 at the Broncos 2-5. We have just a couple minutes left, so let's try to run through this quickly here. Who do you like in this matchup?
Yeah, just quickly going through it, Javonte Williams is my sleeper play. I feel comfortable starting him. He looks good after coming back from injury.
I agree. That was my pick too, Javonte Williams. So that was an easy one.
There we
Let's do
go.
one more. Bengals at 49ers. Who's your sleeper there?
Yeah, so this one I'm going to go with Sam Darnold. So Brock Purdy has been a
There you
top
go.
10 fantasy quarterback, and it sounds like Purdy is going to be out with a concussion. So it looks like Sam Darnold's going to step up, and I think he's very capable of putting up a good fantasy score, especially at home against the Bengals. He's got so many options on offense, and that's what's going to. I mean, that can easily make a top fantasy quarterback just be surrounded with McCaffrey. I know Debo is going to be out, but I mean they've got Ayuk, Kittle. Just dump off passes to McCaffrey, and you can rack up those fantasy points.
That's a true statement. That offense can make a lot of QBs look good. I still think Brock Purdy is a legit good QB, and I don't think he's a system QB, but I agree with you here. I think Darnold could be a good play. I actually kind of like Tyler Boyd. I know Higgins is back, but Boyd still had 7 catches for 38 yards and a score in the game. Higgins returned his last time out. He has 6 or more catches, 2 straight games. 49ers, as I mentioned earlier with Burrow, a lot of injuries in the secondary, struggling to stop the pass right now. So I like Boyd in this matchup. All right, Logan, we didn't get to all the games, unfortunately, but a lot of fun always talking with you on the show today. Really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff.
And thanks to everybody out there for watching. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate conversing with everyone. And good luck in all of your games this week in week 8. This has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports.